Broadcasting from East Tennessee and Northern Alabama, you're listening to Justified Radio, where each week we look at today's issues through the lens of God's Word. Justified Radio. Justified Radio. It's where life meets the Bible.
Once again, this is Justified Radio, Alabama, Tennessee. David, Sally, Phil Whittemore. What else is there to say, Dave?
That's about it, really. That's pretty much American citizens. I don't know what else we could say there, but yeah. Believers in the Lord, both. Yeah.
Yes. You know, born in the USA and then reborn.
Right. Yeah. In the same USA.
In the same USA. Well, but reborn for a different place than the USA.
Yep.
So American and child of God.
Yep. There you go. You can't beat that. The child of God part. Well, American, we're pretty fortunate to live in this country. I don't care what people say.
Listen, a lot of complainers, aren't they? And sometimes we're like that too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have. But anyway, this is still a great country, still a country that's really united, I believe, with all my heart because of God's grace, God's goodness, God's kindness. That's why we haven't exploded or imploded, whichever way you want to call it.
Well, you know, when people focus on the problems that we have, and we have a lot of problems, but you know, let's take what is a hot topic for a lot of people and just say, well, immigration. You know, whether it be legal or illegal, some people just have a problem with, you know. Well, you need to remember that the reason for the problem that you get so upset about is because we have such a great nation. Everybody wants to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't see buses. You don't see people loading up buses heading down to Mexico or even up to Canada. You just don't see it. No,
I mean that, you know, and you got to. I always feel this way. I don't. Strangers get political anymore. You know, you have to do something about it. You got to control your borders. I mean, you know, we have nations because God ordained that there would be governmental units, you know, geographical governmental units, and you have to do that. But I understand. I mean, for all the worry, the complaints and everything, if anything, I understand why anybody who lived in another country, especially when we look at Central America, South America and all that, why they would want to bring themselves and their families here. I get it.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I completely understand. I've been to some of the Central American countries, and you down there, you know, immediately upon landing at the airport and starting out into the community, you start seeing things that are just so different than they are up here.
Well, I mean, I guess since I didn't come from anywhere else, so there would be nowhere to deport me to. But I think I could honestly say that if I were deported, I would immediately focus my attention and my efforts to sneaking back in.
Oh yeah, I would too.
I'd be in a wheel well of an airplane. I'm not much for climbing anymore.
No, I can't do that very well. And folding up, I don't do that good either.
Well, and I'm not making light. I mean, this is not a joke. This is serious business. But the point being is we live in the most blessed country in the world still.
Well,
could it be better at times? Yeah. But,
sure. And we could, you know, the things we're discussing here and what we'll discuss today, you couldn't talk about this openly in Russia. You couldn't talk about this openly in a lot of countries, because what we're talking about is the fact that we believe is a fact, that there is a creator God who made everything, still controls everything, and ultimately will reveal himself as being the Lord over everything.
Right. And so we do want to progress with that, because, you know, it gets, you know, we could talk the phrase, we can talk ad nauseum. We could talk about this until, people were sick of us talking about this. I think that,
Yeah.
but we do want to move on. But let's touch real briefly, because we've got other things we want to talk about concerning creation, the universe, what it means to be made in the image of God. But let's wrap up some of these views, because we've touched on them. First of all, we defined or identified young Earth creationism, which is simply the belief that God created in a literal 6 24-hour day period and rested on the seventh day, and that the earth, because of that, and that we can get the timeline from the Bible, because of that, the earth is somewhere around 6,000, even though some will extend that up to around 10,000 years old.
Yeah, and that's something I've never understood that, and even in the great study Bibles, the MacArthur Study Bible, it'll say, the universe is somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000. Well, if you're going to say that, just go ahead and stay with the biblical account, because adding 4,000 years doesn't change anything, really. But that's who a young earther would be, and that is who I am. I'm a person who believes that you can get a literal timeline from the Bible. Genesis chapter 5 and chapter 11 brings you up to Abraham, who was born about 2166 BC, and that can be established by archaeological, cultural, and all kinds of different interpretive methods. When he was around, when the patriarchs were around, when Israel began to be a nation, you can get that pretty much from history. And but anyway, that's why I believe in a young earth. And we talked a little bit last time about the gap theory, because people who adhere to the gap theory still believe in a God who created, still believe in a God who created everything and is in control of everything, still maintain the time frame that the Bible gives us for the patriarchs, but they still believe in an old mass of earth and an old system of being that the earth is. So, how does that work out? And there are some great minds, as we said last time, W.A. Criswell, G. Campbell Morgan, some really great men of God who believed in the gap theory. Well, Thomas Chalmers, who really came up with it in the early 1800s, a Scottish preacher, he was a man of God. Started hearing the rumblings of evolutionary thought and began to think, well, how could that be, and what we believe be accurate as well? And he came up with the gap theory, began to preach that, publish writings about that, and people began to buy into it.
Well, and it explains some things, short of, you can take it and explain to the millions, the billions of years of existence, and it is an explanation while at the same time allowing you to adhere to the biblical account of creation. Mm-hmm. And it also allows you to account for some things that happened before the creation of man, Adam and Eve, and being placed in the garden, but still happened during creation, and that is how you deal with the angels, the fallen angels, the heavenly councils, the angels that watch creation. Somewhere that has to happen.
Right.
Satan rebels, and those who follow Satan rebels, and somewhere that has to happen. And we know chronologically that it happened, at creation, and that angels existed before creation. They witnessed creation.
Right. Right. And that's why this discussion we're having here, I place the angelic realm outside of time. We're bound, and we're under the constraints of time. Every minute we talk, every second that goes by, Ray Comfort, one of his big things is there's another minute gone, and somebody's gone to hell and somebody's gone to heaven. Time's valuable to us, but to angels, time's really, in God's domain. A lot of people say, well, now I believe we can figure this out because the Lord said a day is like 1,000 years. Well, he did, but he also said 1,000 years are like a watch in the night, which is about 3 to 4 hours. So the only thing he was saying when he said those things, a day is as of 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day, is just time doesn't matter to him. I mean, I can't even imagine 1,000 years. I can easily imagine a day.
You know, a couple of things. One is I was at a funeral. What was this past week, and anyway, someone made mention of Richard Ratliff, which was you know a local pastor and everything, and that you know speaking of eternity, that he was used the illustration of a clock, and that you know here we have a clock that has hands that counts down the time, you know, that's always moving. And then he would turn that away to try to explain the eternity of heaven. He'd said, in heaven, there's a clock too, but it has no hands.
Yeah.
And so my pastor used to try to explain eternity is imagine a large granite mountain that a bird flew by once a year and pecked, but only once a year, and imagine how long it would take for that bird to peck that mountain until it no longer existed. And then that's just a second of eternity.
Yeah. I mean, time, you know, there's whole studies on time and, you know, how the Lord dealt with time, how we deal with time. William Lane Craig, who has been one of my favorites, and he's kind of fallen from grace in my eyes a little bit. Not because of anything, just his views on evolution. I can't buy.
Because he doesn't see things like you.
Right. And he's wrong because of that.
There you go. Which is what we've been talking, which we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but I will say this in my defense. Just because William Lane Craig has about 4 earned doctorate degrees or something, you know, very smart, he's very intelligent. That doesn't mean that he's always right and I'm always wrong.
Well, no, it does not. So,
yeah. There you go.
I do agree with that. Yeah. Now, we move on from the gap theory to, we get into, all this is old earth, but then we get into a day-age creationism, and you touched on it. Mm-hmm. A day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years like a day, which is, okay, the Bible describes 6 days of creation, and that's fine. Yep. But the days don't necessarily have to be 24-hour days because time is, you know, the Bible makes allowance that a day may not be a 24-hour day. It could just be a period of time, and that period of time could be millions of years.
Yeah, I mean, and the Bible uses that. It uses the word day in different ways. Some it means a literal day. Now, this is where, and Phil and I talk a lot about context. You got to read things in context. Well, when the Bible's talking about a day, you've got to make sure you're reading it in context. Is he using the day to describe a particular 24-hour time period, or is he using day to describe a period of time, or the period of the timeline of a nation, the timeline of a king, the day of David, the day of, you know, however. You got to make sure you read it in context, and you can't jerk it out of context. When the Bible's talking about a day, Ken Ham makes a point, and I wrote them all down here in my Bible, but when the term is used and it's tied to a number, a day and a number, it always means a modern day, just like we do today. Evening and morning, that means a day. You can't change that. The context says that's a day like we have today. Different things like that. You got to make sure you read things in context.
And I agree with that, but you know, just to be the counterpoint side of point counterpoint, which is what it feels like. You know, as far as when the Bible's written, who the Bible's written to, in the time in history, whatever. Even if this day age theory was true, you could not provide the context of that in the Bible. The people who were receiving the inspired word of God, they couldn't have comprehended, they just couldn't have comprehended it. There's no way that you would find that described in the Bible at that time, that it just couldn't, you know. Yeah. And so when you're saying, well, and you do have context context is king. Now there's a true statement. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, context is king. But at the same time, you have to understand how context works, and there's mysteries. Now, I'm not saying this is, but there are things that God has chosen not to. He just hasn't revealed yet.
Right.
And now, whether all those mysteries have been revealed, as far as the Bible, it seems like, but me personally, I think there's stuff we don't know that'll be revealed. So in a sense, there's still mysteries to be revealed to us.
Sure. That's why I don't have a problem. People say, and we've talked about this last time, I know, but people talk about us as being a people who say, who believe in, that, well, God did that. That's why we don't understand it. If we can't understand something, we talk about, well, God did that. That's just, well, yeah, really we do, because he did do everything. There's nothing that we interact with today that God hasn't either created to be in our life or that he's allowed to be in our life. Nothing. Everything that we view, that we interact with, it's all been created by God. We don't understand it all. We still don't understand how the brain works. We know what the brain's made up of, but we don't understand the mind. How you have these thoughts, how you can change thoughts, how you can think two thoughts at a time or put two things. We just don't understand that. The neuroscientists, the neurophysicists, they don't understand that either.
Nope.
They're working on it, but they still don't know it.
But they don't know it. Now, that's not to say it won't ever be known. Let's just say there was a time in history that the miracle of birth was the miracle of birth. Mm-hmm. That somehow or the other, man and woman, they came together and a child was conceived and nobody knew. They might have known the mechanics.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Right, but no one knew how a child was created through that union.
Yep.
Okay.
Now we do.
God did it. Well, now we do. And you know what? God still did it.
He did. Can't take him out of the equation. You just can't.
No. Okay, so let's move on just a little bit about it, which is we start to with Christians with an old earth philosophy, but we get away from this gap theory and we get away from this day age thing that reconciles a literal interpretation of creation in the Bible, but that the dates can be understood differently.
Yeah.
Then you start moving into, go ahead.
Well, the day age theory and the framework hypothesis, it's two, they work together. So if you're reading something and they're talking about the framework hypothesis, they're talking about a day age. At that first day, these things happened. That second day, it had moved on to these things happened. The third day, it moved on. So you're talking about the same thing, really, same type of theory as far as creation goes. The day age and the framework hypothesis work together. So now we move on.
Okay. And so we start to move into evolution. Mm-hmm. And attempts to reconcile evolution with creation and be true. I'm just going to say, and be true both to the Bible and to science. To have it both ways.
Yeah, and that's theistic evolution. That's where you still believe in a creating God, but he did things over time. He is the one who designed things to be able to evolve, if I can say it like that. Personally, anything that ties the Bible to evolution, I believe is wrong. I personally think that evolution's been the greatest lie that Satan has ever propagated and passed down to humanity. Used Darwin and some people before him, and then many people after him. But I believe anything that you put an evolutionary view to is damaging and sometimes damning, because it leads people away from faith in God. Evolution never did anything, or at least in my opinion, to help people believe more strongly in God. It has been used to draw many people away from God.
No, I like how you phrase that. We're not to bury our heads in the sand about things, even though a lot of people would like to.
Yeah, we can't.
And we can't, but at the same time, our focus in everything that we do, David, however we do it, our focus has to be on glorifying God.
Right.
I mean, that's what the reformers, that was the purpose of life. Glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That trying to come up with just a nutshell. And so I guess we've got to be careful that we never in the pursuit of just, intellectual discussion or whatever, but if something doesn't glorify God at all, or diminishes God, which is, to me, that old command that thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, that's not me saying GD.
Right. There's a whole lot more to that. Yep.
That's me, and somehow or the other, with what I'm speaking or my actions, hurting the reputation of God or diminishing God.
Right. Right. And when you add evolution to the creative process, honestly, it just looks like God didn't know what He was doing in the beginning, and He made things, and then He allowed them to become things. Well, I think that part of evolution is a fear in humanity to attribute everything that's gone wrong to us. Because if you read the Bible and let the Bible say what it says, in the beginning, everything was made in perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Eve, before sin, they were perfect. The universe was perfect. The things that were on the land that were beginning to grow, they were growing in a perfect manner. And then sin came in the rebellion that Eve showed, and then Adam followed against God, and it's caused everything since then. Evolution that brings man on the scene late, you've got a whole, literally, if you believe in evolution, you've got millions and millions of years before humanity came to the evolutionary point that they believe it has come to now, and you still have death, disease, and destruction. That's what you find in the fossil layers. So for some reason, things were dying, things weren't the way they're supposed to be, even before the sin of humanity. And again, that takes some of the truth of God away, and it also takes a lot of the responsibility away. The reason things are the way they are is us. I mean, that's just the way it is. Why is we were talking earlier, why is immigration such a hot topic? Because people can't get along with each other. And you see somebody with a little bit of different hue in their skin, you don't like them as much as you should.
Well, okay, see, and this is where, okay, evolution, when it's at odds with the Bible, is an evolutionist. Part of the foundation of a belief in evolution is the survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Okay. And so at its core, evolution says when it comes to mankind, when it just comes to us and other, species of animals, that we just keep getting better and better and better and better and better.
Mm-hmm. That's what evolution believes.
That's evolution, right? Is that we just keep getting bigger, faster, stronger, whatever, but we get better and better and better and better and better. The Bible tells us that since, the sin in the garden and that, sin entered our nature, but the Bible tells us that man that listened, left to our own devices, we just get worse and worse and worse and worse.
Mm-hmm. Now, which one of those do you see?
Right. What does the evidence point to?
Yeah.
We do. We just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
The evolutionist would to an extent. I mean, because there's shades of stuff, and no one's purely anything because bias is all this. But this is where you get into, okay, a person does something. Now we're going to get into Sam Harris and
yeah, Four Horsemen.
And we'll just talk about how much choice that man has, predestination and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, an evolutionist would make an excuse for everything, saying simply, this is how you're programmed, this is what you've evolved to be. And so when you make these mistakes, when you do wrong, this, that, and the other, a lot of them would say you had no choice in the matter. It's just the way you're programmed. You can't be blamed.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is not true, but I like it.
Oh, sure. Get you off the hook. Yeah.
It's not true, but it's, if I've done something wrong, I'd like to be able to point fingers at something besides me.
Yeah, you've just walked into a bar and killed 15 people, and you go to the court and you say, "Well, Judge, it wasn't my fault. That's just the way I was designed." He's not going to buy that. It's the way I was designed,
no. Well, but David, sometimes they do.
Yeah, I know.
Again, but it's how I was designed. It's how I was raised. It's the environment that I found myself in.
Yeah.
And okay, but then you go to the biblical account. The biblical account says no, that everything, you may suffer the effects of sin in someone else's life, but everything you suffer is the effects of sin in somebody's life.
Yeah. Yeah, sin. It goes. It's internal. It's external. It's communal. It has all kinds. Peer pressure. Peer pressure is just people following a group, usually into bad behavior. Peer pressure should work the other way, leading
and it
people
can
into
work
better
the other
behavior.
way.
It can, but which way does it work most of the time?
It works the other way. Why? Because inside, and here's the truth. Inside, our nature is we want to do the bad thing.
We're rebels. Yep.
And the peer pressure gives us an excuse or an environment for us to just let loose and do those things that oftentimes we suppress, and now we'll just follow the crowd. And it's kind of like going down the highway. I want to drive at 100 on the interstate, but I don't. But if I'm surrounded by about 20 other cars,
you will.
yeah, I'll fall right in line.
Sure. Yeah, we were coming back from, and I'm pretty much a law abider. I mean, I'm not saying anything about me. That's just the way I am. I don't like to speed. I don't like coming home the other day, traveling down Interstate 75, and I thought, man, and I felt like we were just traveling along, 50 or something. I looked down at my speedometer. I'm in a crowd. We're traveling together. Nobody's outrunning anybody. We're doing 87 miles an hour.
Yep. Yeah, and that's peer pressure.
Sure.
Yeah, you can define it however you want to, but you're going along with the crowd.
Group behavior, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't do 100 anymore if I ever did, because I've gotten old. I'm a law abider too, but I've gotten old.
I never have done 100 because I'm afraid to.
Well, listen, sometimes you do it or die.
Yeah, okay. That's that evolution in me, that survival of the fittest. I know if I go 100, I'm gonna wreck and get hurt. So
well,
no, I'm not an evolutionist. But anyway,
but these are some of the differences. These are some of the ways that Christians and I'm really sensitive. I don't want to judge anyone's salvation based on what they think of creation. Because, and I know we want to say, well, if you're orthodox with your beliefs, but our salvation all comes down to what we do with Jesus Christ and what we do with acknowledging our sin and repenting of that sin.
Yeah. Yeah, it all starts with him, and it really ends with him too. But when we believe in him and listen to him, the Bible becomes more vibrant to us. It becomes more real to us. It's not just a book of stories. It's a book of history. Sure, there are stories in it. There are allegory in it. There are all kinds of poetic thought in it, but it's still God's word teaching us how we got here, why we're in the shape we're in, and what the answer is.
Okay. So let's talk about design a little bit, though, and we'll touch a little bit more on evolution and everything. because again, there's different views. Because an evolutionist will look and they'll say, okay, the evidence of evolution is if you look at these species, if you look at cats and dogs and other animals, and you look at man, you have all these similarities in designs, bones, joints, the mechanics, all that. So they must have came from a common ancestor and then split or whatever for them to share all this commonality, though, when it comes to what their bodies look like, work like, and like that.
Yeah, and that held a lot of sway with a lot of people for a long time, and actually still does. But really, people need to open up their eyes and their minds, because we're in a time now where we're not going to be able to believe some things like we did. The progress that they've made in DNA reconstruction, looking at the DNA strands and things, and people will say, well, look at DNA. I don't remember what it is, but we share a lot of DNA similarities to a banana. And it's not a joke. We really do.
No,
we do. You do the DNA on a banana and do the DNA on a human. There's a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities between the DNA structure in humanity as there is in an ape. Okay? But here's the thing. There's marked differences. And there's differences that I believe God put in there to when we got to this stage of scientific knowledge, we could say, oh, well, yeah, they might look alike in some aspects, but here it is. There's a grand difference that can't be crossed over. Now, I'm not going to turn into a banana, and a banana's not going to turn into me. Some people might argue that. They might say, well, you're more like a banana than you are a human. Whatever. But, that's where we are. There are just a lot of things now you can't deny.
The similarities?
The similarities, yeah. But you look at all the similarities between the mammals. Most of them are quadrupeds. They walk on all fours. Some, right. Best I can tell, humanity, man and woman, are the only creatures in God's creation that walk upright.
And that's really the gist of the conversation, though.
Sure is.
Did we evolve from something to that, or did God create us that way? Mm-hmm. And even though there's similarities between man and ape and man and chimpanzee and everything like that, it comes down to, if you're a designer and God is the grand designer, and if you have a design that works, you use that design.
Sure.
When you have man and you have animals and species of animals, one doesn't have bones and joints and fingers and toes, and the other made out of metal and wheels and everything. You have the similarities that are there, and on purpose, and not because of evolution, but rather because God deemed this is the best way to make them.
Yeah, you can do the same thing with architecture. You can look at an architect, different buildings, and people can tell this building was designed by Phil Whittemore. This one looks like it was too, because of the similarities between the two. People look at Picasso's paintings, and the ones that are into all that, they can tell, yeah, that looks like a Picasso. Well, why? Well, because of the way it's done. There are just similarities there that can't be faked, can be faked, but really they can tell.
Well, see, and that comes down to just my base argument against evolution. The denial of God as a creator is that no one would look at a Picasso painting, no one would look at a painting and say that there was no painter.
Right.
Look at this beautiful painting that I found, growing out in the woods. No, you see a painting, and if it's a particular style of painting, not only that there's a painter, but it is Picasso or whoever. They find these valuable paintings in yard sales, and they sell for millions of dollars, and the way that they identify them is they look at them and they know that this person painted that because their fingerprints are all over it in such a way.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny that. That's just the way it is. A designer has a design, and when God designed, he had the best design. You can't improve on it. We were talking earlier about, I like to watch Gunsmoke, and Festus was talking about some improvements he thought should be made to the human body, and Doc was listening to him, and one was, our mouth should be up here so we could eat out of our hat when we were out on a ride. Another is put an eyeball on the end of your finger so whenever you were being shot at, you could look around a corner without having to expose yourself to a gunshot. I mean, Festus had some good ideas, I guess, but they wouldn't work in the long run. But, there you go. Sorry.
Well, okay. No, but okay. But here's evolution, and then we'll start winding it up. Evolution would say that if the superior design for the human body that would make us adapt and flourish and survive was so that we could eat out of the top of our head, or that we were able to survive by looking around the corner with a finger, eyeball on our finger, that's what it would take for us to survive and thrive, then that's what we would look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, that's what evolution says, isn't it? I mean, kind of.
It is. Yeah. And I guess our whole thought here is just, we want our listeners, we want people, we want anybody we come in contact with to realize what a great God we have. A God who created things and created things very well. I mean, we still, even with the flaws we have, we still work pretty well. And that's what we want more than anything, is to help people understand God made you like you are. Well, I've got a lot of problems. I've got physical. God made you like you are. Sure, we've got problems now. I've got arthritis. I've got pains in my joints. But my God made me like I am and has prepared a place for me so that one day I can be where he is. That's what he said. And that's what it all boils down to.
Right. And it is. And everything else is in a sense superfluous. Mm-hmm. It's important, or it's God wouldn't reveal it to us, but we have to remember to keep the main thing.
Yeah.
So
got to make decisions. Make your decisions based on the Bible.
Right. And we're going to talk about decisions and things next time. I think, David, if you're on the same page as me, is, we get to that point in Genesis that God, when he's talking about creation, it comes to man, that the thing that makes man different from any other creation, anything else God created, is because only mankind is created in the likeness and the image of God.
Right. And we want to talk about that some next time. They're just such a depth of discussion in Genesis. I mean, we're taking you through the first 11 chapters, and it's going to take a while, but I hope you stay with us. Hope you enjoy it. This is good stuff, and we want to present it as best we can. Phil and I both love the Lord, and we're very thankful to have people like you with us listening. Hope you'll interact with us some. If you have questions, something we've said that you don't agree with and want more explanation about, contact us. You can get in touch with me at david@justifiedradio.org, or you can reach Phil at Phil, Phil, at justifiedradio.org. We'd love to have your questions. We'd love to talk to you.
Right. And so I'll second everything that David said. You can always find us on the web, justifiedradio.org. And David, until the next time, what do you say?
I love to say shalom, peace.
God bless you all.
You've been listening to Justified Radio, where life meets the Bible. You can find us on the web at justifiedradio.org, where you can submit questions, subscribe to the podcast, and find links to our social media. That's justifiedradio.org. Until next time, thanks for listening.